In the spring, the star chart will come in handy for quite a bit of assignments. On this one, today's lesson, we are going to deal with this right here, which is the circumference. Okay? And they give you two formulas. So yesterday you realized that pi was a ratio of circumference over diameter. Well, if you take this equation and you divide both sides by diameter, you would get pi equals circumference divided by diameter. Okay, so we have two formulas. One is 2 pi r and one is pi d. If I rewrite this to pi 2r, 2r, r stands for radius, and two radiuses are actually a diameter. So both of these are the same formula, and you can refer to them each time. Now, what is circumference? When I have a circle, it is starting at one point on the edge and pulling a string all the way around. So in shapes that are closed, figures that have lines that are made up of lines, it's called perimeter. Circles are kind of snotty little shapes because they don't have as many straight sides. Actually, they have an infinite number of straight sides. But this is, circumference is the fancy circle name for find perimeter. And this is going to come in handy when you have soup cans later and you have to find the length around the bottom of the soup can. And that'll come in handy. So we're going to do c equals 2 pi r, c equals pi d. I tend to do 2 pi r. And it doesn't matter because you will either be given a radius or a diameter. Whichever one you're given, you can utilize it. So, here we go. Here is some practice problems. Determine the radius or diameter of each circle given the dimensions. So if I have radius, two radiuses equal a diameter. So if I'm given a radius, then the diameter is 26 because 13 times 2 is 26. So if I have a radius, and a radius goes from center to side, and a diameter goes from side to side through center. And as pictures down here, they can be in any orientation. So a diameter goes from side to side, passing through the center of the circle. A radius goes from center to side, but if then you did another center to side, it would go the entire diameter. And a diameter is a straight line. Diameter, so diameter divided by 2 equals r. So r equals 8. Diameter of 4 feet, I divide by 2. My radius is 2 feet. My radius is 7. I multiply by 2. I have 14 miles for my diameter. Radius is 10. I multiply by 2 to get my diameter because 2 diameters make a diameter. 2 radiuses make a diameter. If I have a diameter, I divide by 2 to get the radius. And so that is 11. Radius is 11 yards. Determine the circumference of each circle. Use 3.14 or 22/7 for pi. Round to the nearest tenth if necessary. So I am going to let you know that there's going to be some ways to write this. So I'm going to write c equals pi d or c equals 2 pi r. Those are my formulas. If I have a diameter, I'm going to multiply it by, I'm writing my formula. Then I do pi times 9, and 9 pi is how it would be written formally. And then after you do the 9 pi, notice I flipped it around, you're going to multiply 9 times 3.14 and get 28.26, round to the nearest tenth, so 28.2. Because this is a string wrapped around, it is centimeters because perimeter is units. C equals pi d. Diameter is 3, so it's 3 pi. There's sometimes multiple choice answers because this is an estimate. It's not an exact number because we're using pi, which is an irrational number. I'm going to leave it as 3 pi and it's more recognizable. But this says round to the nearest tenth, so it's telling me to do that. And that is 9.42, so my answer is 9.4 inches because it is a string and it's the perimeter of a circle. C equals 2 pi r equals 2 times pi times 11 equals 22 pi. And then after I leave it as 22 pi, I multiply it. And I get 69.08. Round to the nearest tenth is 69.1. Meters. C equals 2 pi r, because I'm given a radius, equals 2 times pi times 21 equals 42 pi. Then I multiply 42 times pi using 3.14, 131.88, rounding to the nearest tenth, 131.9 miles. C equals pi d equals pi times 70. To write it in the way it would show up, and an answer is 70 pi. 70 times 3.14 is 219.8 yards, and it's already only to the 10th. Circumference, C equals 2 pi r equals 2 pi. I'm showing you my substitution. Equals 36 pi. Then at the very last I do 36 times 3.14 and I do 113.04. It has always been suggested, and then round it to the 10th, sorry, 113.0. It has always been suggested to leave your pi in your problem until the very end because then you don't have to use decimals throughout. C equals 2 pi r equals 2 pi times 5 equals 10 pi. So all I did was multiply 5 times 2, pulled it out front, which is 31.4. C equals pi d equals 12 pi. $37.68, which would be 37.7. And this is what I'm expecting on shown work also when you're finding circumference. Writing down the formula, showing me the substitution, showing me what you got, and showing me that you rounded to the nearest tenth. C equals pi d equals 14 pi. This is going to be a larger number because the radius is larger, so it would take a longer string. 14 times 3.14 equals 43.96. Would round up to 44 because the 9 becomes a 0. And I would put a 0 to show that it's the 10th. C equals 2 pi r equals 2 pi times 17.5. Twice of 17.5 is 35 pi. 35 pi times 3.14 is 109.9 kilometers. Look, I'm being lazy and I didn't do this. This is feet. This is centimeters. This is meters, kilometers. C equals 2 pi r equals 2 pi times 9 equals 18 pi. 18 times 3.14 is 56.52. Rounded is to the 10th is 56.5 yards. Whew! Remembered my units, that one. C equals 25. Whew! C equals pi d. 25 pi. Now you don't have to do pi and then 25 and then flip it around. We'll let you do it that step all in one. And that is 78.5 feet. Finding the circumference is finding the length of starting here and wrapping a string all the way around the circle. And remember that circumference, or pi, is a ratio. Pi is a ratio of the circumference over the diameter. And so all we did was pull that to the other side. That is how you find circumference of a circle.